The killing of a Canadian man in the Philippines is being described by their Prime Minister as cold-blooded murder. John Ridsdel was one of 4 tourists, including 2 Canadians, who were kidnapped by a militant group last fall. The kidnappers demanded a large ransom and threatened to kill their captives if it was not received by today. The CBC's Susan Lunn has more from Ottawa.
John Ridsdel's family says he loved life and lived life to the fullest. After working as a journalist, including at the CBC, he became a mining consultant, work that took him around the world, including many dangerous places. Today, it was a grim Prime Minister who confirmed the news of his death.
This was an act of cold-blooded murder, and responsibility rests squarely with the terrorist group who took him hostage.
That terrorist group, Abu Sayyaf, took Ridsdel and 3 others from a Philippines resort last September, including fellow Canadian Robert Hall. Today, Ridsdel was beheaded as the deadline to pay a ransom came and went.
Canada condemns without reservation the brutality of the hostage takers and this unnecessary death.
Ridsdel's family said in a short statement today, "Our family is devastated at the loss of our father and brother, John Ridsdel, whose life was cut tragically short by this senseless act of violence, despite us doing everything within our power to bring him home." Abu Sayyaf was reportedly asking for more than $6 million per hostage, but both the Canadian and Philippine governments have a no ransom policy.
My heart just crashed. I couldn't believe it.
Ridsdel's longtime friend was writing letters to federal cabinet ministers, imploring them to do everything possible to negotiate his release.
There's got to be ways of saying, we can't have our Canadian citizens be killed this way.
But another friend and former Liberal leader Bob Rae says Canadian officials did all they could.
Everybody has to understand how really tough this is, how complicated it is, and also how brutal an enemy we're dealing with. We're not dealing with a reasonable group of people here. We're dealing with an absolutely brutal enemy.
Abu Sayyaf has been active in the Philippines for decades. For years, they were aligned with al-Qaeda, but more recently, they've pledged allegiance to ISIS. Philippine officials say the military is stepping up its search for the hostages.
Intensified operations are ongoing. We have forces on the ground currently pursuing these bandits.
John has been.
Cossack hopes Canadian officials now work to save the other hostages.
I think we have a moral obligation to keep going on this, to say, look, you cannot do this to the other hostages who are there. You cannot kill Robert Hall.
The Prime Minister did not take questions from the media today, but Justin Trudeau did promise to work with the government of the Philippines and international partners to pursue those responsible for Ridsdel's death and bring them to justice. Wendy?
Thanks, Susan. Susan Lunn.